Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We're here again to cut through the noise, get past the headlines, and really dig into the insights shaping our world.
Absolutely.
And today, we're taking a journey, a pretty fascinating one actually, across the African continent, and also connecting out to its vital diaspora, specifically Haiti today.
It's a landscape facing, well, a lot. Profound controversies, real hopes, and these huge global challenges, often all at the same time.
Exactly. We've got this stack of recent reports, really interesting stuff that paints a picture of this dynamism. It's a region, grappling with so much.
It really is. It's a critical moment, you could say. We're seeing nations trying to assert their identity, push for development, but facing these intense pressures, both internal and external.
Yeah, from environmental flashpoints, tricky geopolitical situations, reclaiming cultural heritage, even big economic and sporting ambitions. It's a lot.
A continent in constant motion.
For sure. So for this deep dive, we've pulled from sources like the Associated Press, Reuters, but also specialized reports, Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, FIFA, even local outlets in France and Senegal.
A good mix.
Right. And our mission, as always, is to distill the key stuff, connect those dots that might seem unrelated, and give you that bigger picture, quickly but thoroughly.
So you can really grasp what's going on behind the headlines.
Okay, let's get into it. And we're starting with a story that really throws the tension between environmental responsibility and, frankly, global industry into sharp relief. We're heading to Zambia's copper vault.
Ah, yes, Zambia. This is a really significant case. Back in February 2025, there was this toxic spill at a copper mine there. Sinometals leached Zambia.
That's a Chinese-owned company, right? A subsidiary of a big state-run group.
Exactly, China Non-Ferrous Metal Mining Group. Now, they did admit to a spill initially, but the scale, it seems the reality is much, much more alarming than what they first said.
And this is where it gets honestly pretty disturbing. There's this South African environmental company, Drizzt.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually hired by Sinometals to investigate the spill. But after digging in for 2 months, Drizzt came back with this bombshell accusation.
What did they find?
They claimed the release wasn't just, a moderate spill. They alleged it was 1.5 million tons of toxic material.
1.5 million tons.
Yeah, which is, get this, 30 times more than Sinometals admitted. 30 times.
That's an astonishing difference.
And Drizzt had apparently been sending preliminary reports saying how severe it was, but then literally the day before their final comprehensive report was due, Sinometals terminated their contract.
Really? On what grounds?
They cited contractual breaches, and maybe unsurprisingly, they disputed Drizzt's findings.
Right.
It smells like damage control, doesn't it? Trying to shut down the bad news.
It certainly raises serious questions. And the implications, if Drizzt's findings are accurate, are massive. What kind of toxic materials are we talking about here?
Drizzt analyzed over 3,500 samples. They found dangerous levels of things like cyanide, arsenic, copper, zinc, lead, chromium, cadmium.
Wow. Okay, so cyanide, obviously incredibly toxic, devastating for aquatic life almost immediately. And the heavy metals, lead, cadmium, arsenic, those build up, they bioaccumulate.
Meaning they stay in the environment, get into the food chain.
Exactly. Affecting human health for potentially decades. We're talking hazardous, carcinogenic substances, things that can cause organ damage, birth defects, cancer. It's incredibly serious long-term stuff.
And the impact on the ground, especially on this one vital resource, it's been devastating. The Kafue River.
The Kafue, crucial for Zambia.
Absolutely vital. More than half the country's population, over 10 million people, rely on it for drinking water, for irrigation. It's a lifeline.
And this spill hit it directly.
Directly. It forced a temporary shutdown of the water supply for Kitwe. That's Zambia's second largest city, hundreds of thousands of people.
Okay, so major disruption to a major city.
And the ecological damage. Fish kills were reported 100 kilometers downstream. This isn't just some small industrial accident. It's a full-blown environmental and public health crisis.
So what was the official response? The Zambian government must have reacted strongly.
Well, President Hakainde Hichilema did declare it a national crisis. And the government tried mitigation efforts, like dropping hundreds of tons of lime into the river to neutralize the acid, presumably.
Lime can help with acidity, yes. Did they claim success?
They later claimed the situation was under control.
Yep.
But, and this is a big but, that claim seems to be directly contradicted by the U.S. Embassy.
Oh, what did the embassy say?
Just last month, they ordered their own personnel and families to evacuate the area near the mine. Why? Because of new information about persistent environmental hazards.
So the U.S. government based on its own information, still considers the area hazardous, despite official Zambian reassurances.
It seems that way. It creates this real sense of unease, What's the real situation? Who do you believe?
And it highlights the difficulty in getting clear, unbiased information in situations like this, especially when powerful economic interests are involved.
Which brings us straight to China's role here. It's impossible to ignore their dominance in Zambia's copper sector.
Very true. China is the major player.
Yeah.
And Zambia itself has huge ambitions for copper.
Yeah, they wanted triple production, basically. Get up to 3 million tons by 2031.
Driven by global demand, largely.
Yeah, exactly. Electric vehicles, batteries, all that green tech needs copper. And who's the biggest buyer of Zambian copper?
China.
China. It creates this incredible pressure, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And this is where it gets really complex. We, globally, are pushing for green technology, for EVs, for cleaner energy, which is good, right?
Right.
But that demand creates immense pressure on countries like Zambia to ramp up extraction. And if the regulations aren't strong enough or aren't enforced, or if corners are cut, are we inadvertently fueling environmental damage, maybe even corruption, further down the supply chain?
So the green tech isn't so green if you look at the whole life cycle, the extraction process.
That's the uncomfortable question this raises. What's the true cost of this rapid development? Who bears the burden? It forces us to think about that balance: economic growth versus environmental protection, corporate accountability versus national sovereignty. It's a really tough equation, especially for resource-rich nations.
A critical point. It's a web we're all connected to, whether we realize it or not. Okay, let's shift now. From environmental crises to security challenges, which are equally pressing, we're heading across the globe to Haiti.
Haiti. A situation that remains incredibly difficult. There was another tragedy involving the multinational security mission there recently.
The MSS mission, the Kenyan-led one.
That's right, the UN-backed multinational security support mission. On September 1st, there was a very serious road accident in Port-au-Prince. It involved 2 of their Max Pro armored vehicles. These are heavy-duty, mine-resistant vehicles built for dangerous environments. Apparently, one was towing the other, suggesting a mechanical failure already when the accident occurred on the road between Kenskoff and Pétionville.
And were there casualties? These missions are already so risky.
Tragically, yes. The MSS confirmed 1 Kenyan police officer was killed.
Oh, no.
But it wasn't just mission personnel. 2 Haitian civilians, motorcycle taxi drivers, were also killed in the accident.
That's awful. Just ordinary people caught up in it.
Absolutely. And on top of the fatalities, 8 other MSS officers were injured, 3 of them critically, so much so they had to be medically evacuated to the Dominican Republic for urgent treatment.
It just underscores the incredible dangers they face, doesn't it? Not just from gangs, but from the basic operational challenges, too.
Exactly. And this wasn't an isolated event, which makes it even more concerning.
What do you mean?
This was actually the second major tragedy for the MSS in just over a week, and it marks the 3rd Kenyan officer killed since the mission deployed.
3 officers already. What were the other incidents?
Before this, 2 members of the Haiti National Police SWAT team working alongside the MSS were killed by what was described as a kamikaze drone. And previously, 2 other MSS members were killed in gang ambushes.
So they're facing threats from drones, ambushes, and now these operational accidents. It's an incredibly hostile environment.
Extremely volatile. It's worth noting, though, that reports mention the local community rushed to help immediately after the accident, trying to assist in the rescue efforts.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it? Even amidst all the chaos and danger.
It does, human resilience. But zooming out, this series of incidents really throws the challenges of this mission, and perhaps international interventions like it, into stark relief.
Yeah, it makes you question, well, the effectiveness, the sustainability of it all. Haiti's instability is so deep-rooted.
Precisely. These repeated losses, both mission personnel and civilians, raise critical questions. Are the strategies right? Are the resources adequate? Can an external force truly bring stability in such a complex, fragmented situation? Or does it sometimes risk being perceived as just another foreign intervention, potentially even exacerbating tensions?
That's the paradox, isn't it? How do you help without hindering or without getting drawn deeper into an intractable conflict? It's a massive challenge for the international community.
A fundamental challenge in modern peacekeeping and security support. Can you achieve lasting stability without tackling the absolute root causes of the chaos? It's very, very difficult.
A tough reality. Okay, let's pivot now to a different kind of challenge, this one, about governance, democracy, and the judiciary. We're looking at Ghana.
Yes. Ghana. Often seen as a benchmark for stability in West Africa, but a recent event there has certainly raised eyebrows and concerns about institutional independence.
What happened?
On September 1st, Ghana's Chief Justice, Gertrude Torkornoo, was removed from her position immediately by President John Dramani Mahama.
Removed, not retired or resigned.
Removed. The official reason given was based on a committee report citing misbehavior.
Misbehavior? That sounds quite vague. Did she respond to that?
She did, very strongly. Chief Justice Torkornoo publicly stated the allegations were unfounded. And crucially, she claimed they were politically motivated.
Politically motivated? That's a serious charge against the executive branch.
It is, and it's worth that in context. She was Ghana's third female Chief Justice. So her removal also touches on issues of representation at the highest levels of power.
So, the head of the judiciary removed by the president, alleging political interference. What are the implications of something like that in a democracy like Ghana's?
Well, it immediately puts the spotlight on the separation of powers, a cornerstone of democracy. When the Chief Justice makes such a claim, it inevitably raises questions about judicial independence. Are judges free to make rulings without fear of political reprisal?
Could it have a chilling effect on other judges?
That's the concern. It forces a difficult assessment. Is this legitimate accountability for high office? Or is it an attempt to exert political control over an independent branch of government? Either way, it risks eroding public trust in the judiciary's impartiality, which is fundamental.
A really delicate balance. It shows how even established democracies can face these internal pressures on their institutions. Okay, staying with governance, but shifting to a much more volatile context, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
The DRC Eastern Congo specifically continues to be plagued by intense fighting.
Right.
It's a long-running tragedy, and efforts to bring peace seem constantly frustrated.
What's the latest development there?
On September 1st, there was an accusation from the Congo River Alliance, the AFC. This is a coalition that includes the M23 rebels, a major armed group in the region.
Okay, the AFC. What was their accusation?
They accused the Congolese government, Kinshasa, of violating peace agreements that had been mediated by Qatar.
So there were agreements in place. Tell me more about those.
Yes, Qatar had facilitated talks. There was a declaration back on July 19th setting out a timeline. Negotiations were supposed to start by August 8th, with a full deal aimed for by August 18th.
And did they meet that deadline, August 18th?
Tragically, no. Both sides missed it. And now the AFC is saying the government didn't just miss the deadline, but actively violated the agreements through military action.
What specific actions are they alleging?
The AFC leader, Corneille Nangaa, claimed that government forces, along with allied militias, carried out attacks in South Kivu province.
South Kivu has seen terrible violence over the years.
Indeed. Nangaa publicly called on the international mediators, Qatar and the African Union, the UN, to pressure the government to stick to the deal. He even warned of an appropriate response if attacks continued.
Did the Congolese government respond to these specific claims?
At the time the reports came out, there hadn't been an immediate official response from Kinshasa. So the situation remains very tense and uncertain.
It just shows how incredibly hard it is to make peace stick, doesn't it? You get agreement signed, deadline set, but if the trust isn't there, if the fighting doesn't stop.
It's excruciatingly difficult. Brokering peace is one thing, upholding it, especially when distrust runs so deep and the conflict has been going on for so long, is another challenge entirely. And millions of ordinary people are caught in the middle, their lives constantly disrupted.
And you see this pattern in conflict zones elsewhere too, right? Agreements break down.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
It highlights the challenge for mediators. It's not just about the document. It's about building genuine commitment, some level of trust, and having mechanisms to actually hold parties accountable when things go wrong. Without that, peace deals remain fragile pieces of paper.
And the human cost just keeps mounting. A truly disheartening situation. Let's move now to a human rights issue causing significant international concern. Burkina Faso has passed a new law targeting homosexuality.
Yes, this is a major development, and frankly, a deeply concerning one from a human rights perspective. On September 1st, the ruling junta in Burkina Faso unanimously passed a new law that bans homosexuality.
The junta, so the military leadership that took power in the coups.
That's correct. And this ban came as part of a broader reform of family and citizenship laws. What's really important to understand here is that before the coups in 2022, homosexual acts were not illegal in Burkina Faso.
So this is a deliberate, significant reversal of the previous legal stance.
A very stark change. And the penalties are severe.
What kind of penalties are we talking about?
prison sentences between 2 and 5 years, plus hefty fines. And for any foreign nationals convicted under this law, deportation is also mandated.
Wow, that's harsh. Did officials try to justify this?
The Justice Minister, Daso Rodriguez Bayala, publicly described homosexual acts as bizarre behavior. That language itself signals the state's judgmental stance and intent.
And is Burkina Faso alone in this, or is it part of a wider pattern?
That's a key point. It's not isolated. This fits into a broader worrying trend across parts of Africa, where we're seeing a crackdown on LGBTQ plus rights. Mali, which is also run by a junta and is an ally of Burkina Faso, passed a similar law just last year in November 2024.
And Uganda's law famously drew international condemnation.
Exactly. Uganda's law even allows for the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality. Ghana has also toughened its laws recently. So Burkina Faso's moves, while specific to them, resonates with this wider regional pattern.
How is the junta framing this? Why now?
They're framing it as upholding marriage and family values, linking it to traditional Burkinabe culture. And the junta leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, has been very vocal with his Pan-African rhetoric, emphasizing independence from the West and rejecting perceived Western cultural influences.
So positioning it as an assertion of national identity against foreign values.
Precisely. And this is a narrative that, while heavily criticized internationally by human rights groups and many governments, often finds significant support locally. Homosexuality is sometimes portrayed by officials and believed by parts of the public to be an imported behavior, not something indigenous. So these laws become symbols of cultural sovereignty for some.
Which creates this really difficult clash, doesn't it? Cultural sovereignty versus universal human rights.
It's a major point of tension globally. This case starkly highlights those diverging perspectives. How do you balance a nation's right to define its own social norms with internationally agreed upon human rights standards that protect minorities? And it really underscores the power of political leadership, especially in times of nationalism or political upheaval, to shape social norms, sometimes with very severe consequences for vulnerable groups.
A complex and deeply troubling issue. Okay, let's shift again, moving towards cultural heritage and the powerful act of reclaiming history. We're talking about ancestral remains returning to Madagascar from France.
This is a truly moving and historically significant event. On September 1st and 2nd, 3 skulls belonging to Sakalava ancestors were ceremonially returned to Madagascar from France.
Sakalava. That's an ethnic group in Madagascar.
Yes, a major group, particularly in the west of the island. And this repatriation is actually the very first time France's 2023 law on returning human remains from public collections has been put into practice. So it sets a precedent.
And there's a specific powerful history tied to these remains, isn't there? Especially one of the skulls.
Incredibly powerful. One skull is believed to be that of King Toera. He was a Sakalava king who was killed, actually beheaded, by French colonial troops back in 1897.
Beheaded during a battle.
During the Battle of Ambiki. And Ambiki wasn't just a battle, it was reportedly the site of a massacre. Hundreds, maybe thousands of Malagasy people were killed there, resisting French colonization. The other 2 skulls are said to belong to Sakalava warriors who fought with him.
So this isn't just about returning bones, it's about confronting a very violent colonial past.
Absolutely. And the ceremonies reflected that weight. There was a solemn handover in Paris, attended by King Toera's descendant, King Maria Georges Kamami, along with French and Malagasy officials.
Acknowledging the past at an official level.
Yes. And then in Madagascar's capital, Antananarivo, President Rajoelina himself received the remains at the Mausoleum of National Heroes with full military honors. The plan is for King Toera's skull to be taken back to Ambiki, the site of the battle, for further traditional ceremonies. Closing a circle, in a way.
What does this mean for the Sakalava people, culturally and maybe even politically?
It's immense. Culturally, it allows them to finally perform a crucial ritual called the Fitampoha. It's a traditional ceremony of purification and blessing that requires the physical presence of royal ancestral relics. They haven't been able to fully perform it without these remains.
So it allows them to reconnect with their traditions properly.
Exactly. And King Toera himself is seen as a martyr for independence, a symbol of resistance against the French. His killing was part of a deliberate psychological tactic by the colonizers. So, bringing him home is about restoring dignity, healing collective trauma, and reclaiming a vital part of their identity and history.
It really shows how these acts of returning heritage are so much more than symbolic gestures.
Definitely. This is a powerful example of the global movement to decolonize heritage. It's not just about artifacts in museums, it's about human remains, about ancestors. There's a profound healing potential in returning them, allowing communities to complete cultural practices, to grieve, to recenter their own historical narratives. It's a vital part of seeking justice and recognition for colonial wrongs.
A truly profound story. Okay, from reclaiming the past, let's turn to a very present day and frankly alarming global challenge: the growing role of West Africa in the international cocaine trade.
Yes, this is a deeply concerning trend, laid out in a new report from the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, GITOC, which just came out on September 2nd.
What's the headline finding?
The headline is stark. Criminal groups from the Western Balkans, who are known to be some of the most sophisticated and violent cocaine traffickers in Europe, have significantly embedded themselves in West Africa since about 2019.
Embedded themselves. So it's not just passing through anymore, they're setting up shop, essentially.
That's the picture the report paints. West Africa is becoming a critical hub, a major transshipment zone for cocaine, moving from Latin America towards the massive drug markets in the European Union.
Which specific countries in West Africa are most affected?
The report flags several coastal states: Senegal, Sierra Leone, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde. These nations are now key nodes in this illicit global network.
What's driving this shift? Why West Africa? Why now?
It seems to be a confluence of factors. 1, cocaine demand in Europe keeps rising. 2, authorities have cracked down harder on the more direct shipping routes from Latin America to Europe, making them riskier for traffickers.
So they needed a new route, a new strategy.
Exactly. And 3, critically, West Africa has seen significant expansion and modernization of its ports in recent years. This provides the infrastructure, the container terminals, the shipping connections that these large-scale trafficking operations need.
It sounds like these aren't small-time operators. How organized are they? What are their methods?
Highly organized. The report details powerful alliances they formed, especially with major Brazilian gangs like the Primeiro Comando de Capital, the PCC. The PCC has established networks in Latin America, which the Balkan groups can leverage.
So a partnership across continents.
Yes, and their structures on the ground in West Africa are described as flexible, often using small, trusted units. A key element is their reliance on brokers.
Brokers, what do they do?
These are the crucial intermediaries. They handle the logistics locally, arranging transport, storage, onward shipping. And, very importantly, they are the ones who allegedly liaise with corrupt officials in law enforcement, port authorities, security services, essentially bribing their way through the system. Corruption is the grease that keeps this machine moving.
That paints a pretty bleak picture of institutional vulnerability. Are specific Balkan groups named? And how exactly do they move the drugs?
The report mentions specific groups like the Kabach and Koljari clans from Montenegro, notorious for their internal feuds and violence, as well as Albanian-speaking organized crime groups operating particularly in Senegal and the Gambia. Sometimes they even cooperate with Italian mafia groups like the Ndrangheta.
A truly global criminal enterprise.
Absolutely. And their methods are diverse. They use containers, obviously hiding drugs among legitimate goods, but also non-containerized shipments, maybe using smaller vessels. They engage in complex transshipments out at sea, moving drugs from larger motherships to smaller boats to evade detection. And they sometimes recontainerize drugs within West Africa itself to disguise their origin before they hit Europe. They're constantly adapting.
What does the report say about the likely consequences for West Africa if this continues? And what do they recommend doing about it?
The consequences are grimly predictable. A probable surge in corruption at all levels, potentially increased violence as different groups compete for territory and routes, the risk of these criminal networks fragmenting into even harder to track cells, and the region becoming a safe haven for fugitives and a major center for laundering drug money.
A recipe for destabilization.
Absolutely. To counter this, the GITOC report stresses the need for a coordinated response. Key recommendations include building strategic law enforcement partnerships that cross continents, involving both public agencies and private sector players like shipping companies. They also call for much better intelligence gathering and sharing, and specifically, smart strategies to target and disrupt those crucial brokers who enable the whole operation.
It really lays bare the complexity of these global illicit economies, doesn't it? How weakness or instability in one part of the world gets exploited by these incredibly sophisticated, adaptable criminal networks, threatening stability far beyond their home bases.
It truly does. It underscores that this isn't just a West African problem or a Balkan problem or a Latin American problem. It's a deeply interconnected global threat that requires a genuinely global cooperative response. You can't just tackle one piece of it.
A sobering thought. Okay, let's shift now to economic currents. We'll start with South Africa and how its currency, the rand, is often buffeted by global economic winds.
Yes, on September 2nd, the rand took a noticeable dip against a strengthening US dollar. This kind of volatility isn't unusual for emerging market currencies like the rand, which are often seen as riskier assets by global investors.
What was driving the dollar's strength and the rand's weakness on this particular day? Was this something happening within South Africa?
Not primarily, no. It was largely external factors. Investors globally were looking ahead to a whole slew of important U.S. economic data releases. Things like job opening numbers, private payroll figures, the big non-farm payrolls report, and then crucial inflation data for August.
The Fed watching game.
Exactly. All this data feeds into expectations about what the U.S. Federal Reserve will do with interest rates. If the data looks strong, investors anticipate the Fed might keep rates higher for longer or even raise them. That tends to strengthen the U.S. dollar and pull investment capital away from emerging markets like South Africa, weakening their currencies.
So, decisions potentially made in Washington have a direct impact on the rand's value.
A very direct impact. And what was interesting, as pointed out by Investec's chief economist Annabelle Bishop, was a bit of a paradox.
Oh, what was the paradox?
Gold prices globally were actually hitting record highs around that time. South Africa is a major gold producer, so you might expect high gold prices to support the rand.
Right, more export earnings, stronger currency. Makes sense.
But it wasn't happening. Despite record gold, the rand weakened. And the Johannesburg Stock Exchange's main index, the top 40, also fell that day. It really shows how powerful those global sentiment shifts, driven by U.S. economic expectations, can be sometimes powerful enough to override positive local factors like high commodity prices.
So it's a clear illustration of how interconnected everything is. Events seemingly far away, like U.S. job data, can directly affect the economy and maybe even the cost of living in South Africa.
Absolutely. It highlights the vulnerability of emerging markets to these global capital flows and monetary policy decisions made elsewhere. It's a constant balancing act for policymakers in those countries.
Definitely food for thought about global finance. Okay, let's move from that vulnerability to a story filled with aspiration and potential. The African Food Systems Forum held in Dakar, Senegal. This sounds much more hopeful.
It really does. This forum, which opened on September 1st, was a major event, and Senegal's president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, used it to make a very strong call for a profound transformation of agriculture across Africa. The focus was clearly on achieving self-reliance and food sovereignty.
A profound transformation that suggests the current systems need serious work.
They do. The reality is quite stark. Current food systems in many parts of Africa are fragile. They often rely on basic rudimentary farming methods, highly dependent on unpredictable rainfall, and increasingly stressed by climate change.
And the human impact of that fragility is huge, right?
Massive. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, reported that in 2023, over 700 million people globally faced hunger. A huge proportion of those were in Africa, and the projections are deeply worrying. Potentially over 500 million people chronically undernourished by 2030, with about half of them, 250 million or more, expected to be in Africa.
Those numbers are just staggering. It makes the call for transformation incredibly urgent.
Absolutely. But here's the other side of the coin, the potential. Africa has enormous assets. Around 65% of the world's remaining unexploited arable land is on the continent. Significant water resources too. And perhaps most importantly, this huge, young, growing population.
The demographic dividend, they call it.
Exactly. About 60% of Africans are under 25. By 2050, there could be an additional 600 million working-age young people. And President Faye's vision, which was really powerful, was to position these young people as the spearhead for change.
Spearhead, I like that. It's active, dynamic.
It reframes youth not as a challenge, but as the core asset for driving innovation, collaboration, and this agricultural transformation. It's a shift from narratives of dependency to ones of capability and potential.
So, what are the concrete strategies being proposed to unlock this potential and achieve food self-sufficiency? It can't just be rhetoric.
No, the forum discussed concrete steps. Things like developing training programs specifically adapted for modern, intensive, but sustainable agriculture. Getting youth actively involved not just in farming, but in shaping agricultural policy. And of course, it requires massive investment.
Investment in what specifically?
Modernizing farm equipment. Developing new seed varieties that are resilient to climate change. Much better water resource management, irrigation, conservation. Supporting local processing of agricultural goods to add value, rather than just exporting raw commodities. Using digital technology for farming, for market access. And a big one, finally fulfilling the Maputo Declaration commitments.
That's the pledge for countries to allocate 10% of their national budgets to agriculture, right?
That's the one. Many countries haven't consistently met that target, but the forum emphasized its critical importance for driving real change.
Is Senegal itself putting these ideas into practice? Are they leading by example?
It seems they're trying to. President Faye highlighted several initiatives his government is pursuing. Promoting agricultural community cooperatives to empower farmers collectively. Reforming land use laws, silvopastoral law, new regulations on agricultural imports to support local producers. Trying to bring transparency to the management of things like fertilizer distribution. And investing heavily in storage infrastructure and mechanization to reduce waste and improve efficiency.
So a multi-pronged approach on the ground.
Yes, aiming for a holistic transformation, recognizing that you need to tackle multiple aspects simultaneously, from seeds and water to policy and markets.
It really does paint a hopeful picture. A vision for Africa focused on self-reliance, leveraging its incredible assets, the land, the youth, to tackle one of the world's most fundamental challenges, food security.
It's a powerful narrative shift, moving away from the image of a continent needing aid towards one actively building its capacity to feed itself and potentially contribute much more significantly to global food supplies in the future. It emphasizes African-led solutions to African challenges, which is crucial.
Absolutely inspiring. And speaking of African prowess and global aspirations, let's wrap up with something exciting. The CAF World Cup qualifiers. The race for spots in the 2026 World Cup is heating up.
Definitely. The Confederation of African Football qualifiers are heading into a crucial phase. Match days 7 and 8 are happening in early September, and several teams are right on the cusp of qualifying for the biggest tournament in football. The excitement is palpable across the continent.
Okay, let's run through some of the key contenders. Morocco looked incredibly strong in the last World Cup. How are they doing now?
Morocco is looking very good. They could potentially be the first African team to officially qualify this cycle. They're leading Group E comfortably with 15 points.
Who do they play next?
They have matches against Niger on September 5th and then Zambia on September 8th. And their squad is packed with talent, led by Achraf Hakimi.
Hakimi, PSG star, Ballon d'Or nominee. He had a great Olympics too, right?
Absolutely. Champions League winner with PSG, bronze medal with the Moroccan Olympic team in Paris. He's a world-class player and symbolic of the quality emerging from Africa.
What about Egypt? Always a powerhouse, especially with Mo Salah.
Egypt is also in a strong position in Group A, and yes, Salah is leading the way. He's actually the top scorer in the African qualifier so far, with 6 goals. They have crucial games coming up against Ethiopia, and then a big one against Burkina Faso on September 9th.
And Burkina Faso, they're no pushovers either, are they?
Not at all. They've got talented players like Lassina Traore, Bertrand Traore, contributing goals. That match against Egypt could be decisive for Group A.
Any potential history makers? Teams looking for their first ever World Cup.
Cabo Verde. They're leading Group D and chasing that dream of a first World Cup appearance. They're known more for their really strong team ethic and collective play than individual superstars. They face a huge test against Cameroon on September 9th.
Cameroon, the indomitable Lions. They have the record for African World Cup appearances, don't they?
They do. So that's a classic encounter of the hopefuls against the veterans.
Now, Nigeria. Always full of stars, but sometimes they struggle in qualifying, right? How are the Super Eagles doing?
That's the story again, unfortunately for them. Despite a squad brimming with talent, including Victor Osimhen, who just made that massive transfer to Galatasaray, they're actually down in 4th place in Group C.
4th? Wow. They must be feeling the pressure, especially after missing the last World Cup.
Immense pressure. They'll be absolutely desperate to qualify. They have vital matches against Rwanda, and then a huge clash away to South Africa, also on September 9th.
And South Africa are leading that group.
Yes, Bafana, captained by Ron Wynne-Williams, are currently top of Group C. So that Nigeria match in South Africa is shaping up to be absolutely massive.
Any other teams impressing?
Côte d'Ivoire, the Elephants.
Yeah.
They are dominating Group F. They've scored 14 goals and haven't conceded a single one yet in qualifying. An incredible record. They play Gabon on September 9th.
Wow. The quality across the board seems really high.
It really is. The competitiveness, the tactical awareness, the individual brilliance on display in these qualifiers, it just demonstrates the incredible growth and depth of African football. These aren't just games. They're showcases of continental talent and ambition.
Absolutely. And beyond just the sport, it reflects Africa's growing presence on the global stage, that competitive spirit. And the kind of national pride and unity these moments can spark is just incredible to see.
It truly is. Major sporting events like the World Cup qualifiers offer this unique platform. They unite people, foster national pride, and showcase talent and spirit in a way that often transcends everyday challenges. It's a powerful force.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive.
And what a journey it was. We covered a lot of ground. That environmental crisis in Zambia really highlighting global resource chains.
The tragic risks faced by peacekeepers and civilians in Haiti, the judicial politics in Ghana, the seemingly endless conflict in the DRC.
The difficult human rights questions raised by the new law in Burkina Faso. Then the really moving story of cultural reclamation with the Sakalava skulls returning to Madagascar.
And that alarming spread of sophisticated organized crime into West Africa, balanced against the vulnerability of economies like South Africa's to global shifts.
But ending on those notes of real hope and aspiration, the vision for food sovereignty driven by Africa's youth, seen at the Forum in Senegal, and the passion and ambition on display in the World Cup qualifiers.
We tried, as always, to connect those dots for you. To show how, the copper needed for green tech can have devastating local impacts. How instability in one nation has ripples far beyond. How reclaiming history is vital for healing.
And how asserting control over food systems is fundamental to future prosperity. It's all part of this incredibly complex, dynamic picture of Africa and its diaspora navigating today's world.
So we'll leave you with this to think about. We've heard stories of immense challenges, yes, but also of incredible potential, resilience, and ambition. Looking ahead, say, over the next decade, how might Africa really redefine its role on the global stage?
Moving beyond the old narratives of just being a source of raw materials or a recipient of aid.
Exactly, towards being a genuine driving force for innovation and technology in agriculture and culture and sustainable solutions. And maybe closer to home, how can understanding these complex stories change how you engage with the continent, how you interpret the news, and perhaps even support that evolution?
The question about agency, potential, and shifting perspectives. Worth pondering.
That's all for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some fresh insights and a deeper understanding. Join us next time as we continue to explore the stories that shape our world.